Hi, my name is Kevin Retcher. I'm the owner of First Meridian Mortgage. Today, I want to talk about my very favorite loan, which is the VA IRRRL. IRRRL stands for a interest rate reduction refinance loan. A mouthful for essentially calling something a VA Streamline Refinance would essentially be easier, okay? So let's talk about the IRRRL and some of the benefits and why I feel that it's one of the best loans out there. First of all, I'm a veteran-owned business. I've used the VA loan myself. I think that bar none, it's absolutely the best loan out there for a veteran if he's looking to buy a home. Zero money down, no mortgage insurance, all of those things, okay? The VA IRRRL, the Streamline, is essentially done in a way to help out the veteran once he's already purchased a house, how to help him refinance at a cheaper cost, okay? And then there's also some protections in there just to keep him protected from lenders out there wanting to do what's something called equity stripping, okay? So let's get into some of the key details of a VA IRRRL. First and foremost, of course, you have to have a VA loan on your house, okay? Once you have that, and an example would be in November and December of 2023, the interest rates were around 7% in some cases, and those clients are coming up on their first opportunity to do a streamline refinance here shortly. So one of the key rules that the VA put in place to protect the veteran is that there's a 210-day waiting period from the date of the first required payment. So when we go to do an IRRRL, we're going to ask for the deed of trust, showing when that first payment was actually due and done. And the other part of that criteria is you will have had to have made at least 6 payments on the mortgage in that 210-day time frame, okay? Second criteria, the interest rate has to drop at least 0.5% in interest rate. So in theory, if they purchased at 7% in November or December, they have to get to at least 6.5 before they're eligible to actually do the refinance. Then the third part, or the third leg of the stool here, is they have to recoup their closing cost within a 36-month time frame. So all of these things are done 210 days, half-point lower rate, and recoup within 36 months. Those are all legs of that stool to make sure that the veteran is in good shape, okay, that he's not being taken advantage of. Prior, when they didn't have the 210 days, lenders would refinance them but not give them the lowest rate so that then they could meet that half-point threshold 2 months later and they'd refi them again. One of the biggest benefits for the VA IRRRL is you're allowed to roll in all of those closing costs and prepaids and points, and you're allowed to get up to $500 in totality back at closing, no more, okay? So being that the VA allowed all those closing costs to be rolled in each time, until they had those precautions put in place, lenders were just refinancing people as often as they could. And in many cases, because the VA loan allows you to roll in the interest and the prepaids and the closing cost, lenders were, let's say, not lying, but lying in the fact that they would say, hey, you get to skip 2 payments by doing this refinance. And if you tell anyone that they don't have to make 2 mortgage payments, they're like, sign me up, right? But in general, once you own the house, you should understand you're paying for every day of interest that you own that house. They are just rolling that into the loan. So if you get a document at your house that says refinance and skip 2 mortgage payments, understand that you're really quasi taking some cash out by rolling in 2 payments, closing cost, and potentially a VA funding fee. So if your payment's $2,500 and you roll in 2 of those, that's 25. I mean, that's $5,000. If closing costs are $4,000 and a VA funding fee of 3, you might be rolling in 9, 11 grand, and your principal is increasing rather than decreasing. Okay, so I want you to be aware of any time that you get something in the mail and say skip 2 payments, it's going to cost you equity to do that. Okay, so there's a proper way to do a VA IRRRL and a Streamline, in my opinion, and it's one of 2 ways. My first goal, which I love the most, is if in fact you're able to refinance, pay all the closing costs and the VA funding fee, roll nothing into your loan. So if you owed $600 and you were exempt, or even if you weren't exempt, if you can get a credit from the lender that pays both of those, then that is a no-cost streamlined refinance. Okay, you want to get the streamlined refinance as much at no cost as possible, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to go through the math with you, and part of this, no 2 veterans are alike, whether or not one may be exempt from the VA funding fee and one might not be exempt from the VA funding fee. So I'm going to use the parameters of a $600,000 loan. And I'm going to walk you through some brief numbers. Okay. Let's talk closing costs on a $600,000 VA IRRRL. The average cost with no appraisal is $41.81 in Virginia. Okay. If you were in Maryland, they would not have the recordation of the $1,440. In Maryland, closing costs would be about $2,800, kind of the same for DC. Okay, so if you're not exempt, option 1, if you're not exempt from the VA funding fee, $41.83 in cost, $3,000 in VA funding fee, your total cost is $71.81. That's the number that the VA is going to look at. That you have to recoup that money within a 36-month time frame. Option 2 is one of 2 scenarios built into one. You got $41.83 in cost. You got $3,000 VA funding fee if you were going to roll that into the loan, okay? Or if you were exempt. The reason I built this calculator this way is if someone was exempt, it's pretty much the same thing. So $41.83 is the cost. So understanding your closing costs when it comes to the IRRRL is kind of the first step. The next step is the interest rate and any credits that may or may not apply toward those closing costs, which then offset the math for the 36 months. Okay, so let's go into that. So what are points and what are credits? Okay, so if we look here, and in a situation where we talked about November, December, people were at 7%, right? Now is the time that some of these people are going to come up on their time frame where they're eligible for a refinance, okay? So if they were at 7, we have to get to at least 6.5. So if we look at that, at 6.5, with this particular lender, the lender's paying 1.202% toward the closing costs. Green is a credit, red are points, okay? So if we were to put in here credit to the consumer of 1.2%, okay, in this particular situation, if we look at the cost, that is a credit equal to $7,200, okay? So if we go to the top, we remember if you were not exempt and had to pay all the closing costs, the costs were $7,183. If you got a $7,200 credit, you actually made $16 doing the deal. If you were exempt or rolled in the financing charge, you came out $3,000 ahead. You actually get to keep that $3,000 so long as it goes toward your escrow, and or you do not get more than $500 cash back, okay? Now, is that the best deal for you as a veteran in this particular situation? So if we look at the other numbers at 7.25, the credit is 0.734, okay? I also have another lender that at 6.249, it's paying a credit of 0.51, but then I get to add 0.4 to that, so the credit is actually 0.00911 at that level. So that credit is not if you're not exempt, it would not cover all the cost. You would be short $1,700, okay? So we would roll that into your loan, but let's see how that math would work out if that was the scenario, okay? If that was the scenario, let's see how that math would work out to see if we recoup our cost in 36 months, okay? So at 6.249, the savings per month is $298. So if in fact your cost was $1,717, you would recoup, if you divide 17 by 300, that's roughly 6 months. So at the 6.249 right now, if you were at 7 and you were not exempt from the VA funding fee, you would recoup your closing costs in under 6 months, but you have a 9-month essential lockout period anyway. So there's no way in the world that you don't save money within that time frame. So a streamline IRRRL would make sense for you in that particular situation. Let's look at it if you were in fact exempt from the VA funding fee. You actually would make $1,282 and save the $298 per month. So in theory, there's 0 recoup time, okay? And you're saving money the very first month, okay? So that's kind of the numbers on the VA IRRRL. Now, can you go lower on the interest rate and roll in those closing costs? Sure. Still goes back to the 36-month scenario. It's not my advice, especially if we think that interest rates are going down, right? In an environment where interest rates are going down, 9 months from now, if you are in a situation where you can pay 0 and refinance again, then it makes sense, okay? Now, you're gonna have some people out there say, oh, every time you refinance, you're going backwards. Technically, that's not true, okay? Let's look at some math here real fast on that particular subject, okay? Let's say in general that you did this loan 11/1 of 2023. okay? And you started out at 600,000. You can see these numbers here, okay? Start out at 600,000, now you're down to 595, 984, okay? If you chose to do the 6.5, the 6.49 as 6.249, that was a cost of, let's just call it $1,800. So let's say we rolled in $1,800 on to that loan amount. That's essentially $598. All right. In that particular situation, first payment due August 1. In this particular situation, you would add 9 months to the loan, okay? And that's where people say, oh, I go backwards. Well, you don't really go backwards if you are doing what you should do when you do a streamline, okay? You can literally pay $36 extra a month, that's right here, this calculation, and the loan pays off the very same month, okay? Meanwhile, if you take $111 lower principal, okay, and the $310, that's $420 you're saving, minus 36, you're saving over $3,000. I mean, over $3,000 a year, $300 and some dollars a month. Now you ask, where'd this $111 come from? Hey, this is your mind-blowing moment here, guys. When you get a lower interest rate, if you look at the very first payment on both amortization schedules, lower the interest rate, more gets paid to principal. So if you looked at these two loans the very first month, okay, the very first month of both of these loans, the principal difference is $75 difference each month, okay? I'll show you that so that you can see. The very first payment at 7%, I mean, $491 went to principal. Okay, at 6.24, $567 goes to principal. A lot of people don't realize that you get about 80% of the savings in your monthly payment by getting a lower rate, and about 20% to 15% goes to principal. Okay, so in conjunction with this loan, even if this person rolled in the $1,800, and if they're super smart, just pay, if that payment was comfortable prior, if you pay that $310 as a savings and you pay the exact same payment you're paying now, your loan went from paying off in 351 payments to 292 payments. By doing essentially a streamlined refinance costing $1,800. Now, if you want to do the 6.5 version, again, we showed you prior that the 6.5 was 100% for free. So in that regard, $212 is the savings. Essentially, you pay off in 309 months if you paid the same amount of money. If you paid none, okay, you're saving $260 a month, absolutely for free at 6.5%. So right now, if you're at 7% on a VA loan, you should be looking at doing a streamline refinance in EARL. I would probably look to choose the 6.25% interest rate right now. You're going to have a number of lenders out there trying to sell 5.99 or 5.875, and they're going to roll all of this stuff in. don't make that mistake, because if everything that the Fed is doing, talking about lower interest rates, we're going to be having an opportunity to do this potentially more than once over the next 3 to 5 years. I'm currently at 2.25 on my rate. I refinanced about 4 times to get there. So I never paid closing cost once. I've got a guy at Freddie Mac that refied 13 times. He kept paying that higher amount, just like I just showed you. Every time he refinanced, he was paying off his loan faster. His house is paid off, okay? So remember, term is a function of what you pay to principal. You never go backwards unless you choose to. So if you did go back to a 30-year payment after paying 2 years, you would have to tell me what you did with the money for 28 years, how you invested that and saved that, and then I'd have to subtract it from the remaining 2 years to see whether or not you made money or lost money in that endeavor. If you apply it to principal, or just apply what is required so that it pays off in 28 years, you can do, I'm happy to build you a calculator if you would like. I can send you an amortization schedule. I can do the math for you. I have often told a client, hey, pay $37 extra, pay $50, pay $100, put the savings in your pocket, and keep on amortizing that loan as if you never refinanced, all right? So if anyone ever tells you you go backwards when you refinance, tell them as long as it's a fixed rate to fixed rate and I got a lower rate, the odds are that they're incorrect, and we can always prove them wrong with the math, okay? Terms a function of what you pay to principal, nothing else. So I hope so. In closing, veterans, if you have a VA loan, get ready if you've purchased in the last 2 years to do an IRRRL. Things you need to remember: 210 days on the books, 0.5% lower interest rate. You want to recoup all your closing costs, if possible, with 0 recoup time. VA requires it to be under 36 months. Do not get roped into the 2 months free mortgage payments. They're rolling it in, okay? Ideally, you don't want to roll in any more than that VA funding fee. I'm okay with that. And if you're exempt, beautiful thing. You only have to worry about covering the closing cost. If you're in Maryland, closing costs on a refinance are even cheaper. There's no recordation over in Maryland on a refi, so it's even cheaper. So my name is Kevin Retcher. I'm the owner of First Meridian Mortgage. I specialize in VA loans. I've been in business over 27 years. I'd love to help you, especially on the VA IRRRLs. If you're PCSing, you have other military friends coming into the area, please give them my name and number. I never make more than 1% on a mortgage. I'm one of the cheapest guys in town. Okay, last point. To all the Marines out there, Semper Fi. Talk to you soon.